My name's Alan. I'm a PhD student at the Scott Polar Research Institute in Cambridge, and I use satellite imagery to study glaciers. So all along the way, between mixing field data and satellite data and presenting it, there's a range of different software that I use. And I'm here mostly as a software user rather than anything else, and I don't pretend to be an expert in all of these things, but I just wanted to give a few perspectives on open source and non-commercial versus commercial software products. So a few different examples of where I have to make that choice in my own research. So starting on the upper left, we've got multi-spec versus ERDAS Imagine. ERDAS Imagine is run by Leica Geosystems. It's huge, it's expensive, it can do a lot. We've got multi-spec on the other hand, which has a bus number of 1. It's this one guy who lives in New Jersey that does his thing. But he's really, really friendly. Even though it's not actually open source, if you suggest something and suggest how to implement it, he will. But in terms of making that choice, what I need to use, well, ERDAS is only available on Windows. Multi-spec is available on a lot of platforms. So if I need to work at home on my Mac, then it's multi-spec. But if it's something that's very, very specialized, or something that needs to be batch processed, for example, ERDAS will let you build a model so that something is much more reproducible. So in that trade-off, I kind of use both. But it really depends on what functionality I give it at a certain time. Moving on to QuantumJS versus ArcGIS produced by Esri. That's even more expensive and huge, whereas Quantum is small, but they're both based on Python. So they have extensive functionality if you really want to get into it. Again, there's a platform dependence, but Arc and Esri are really, I guess, industry standards. So although I like to work on QuantumJS on my own computer, I can't usually sell that skill as a research skill to other people quite yet, so it hasn't reached that level of maturation. On the bottom left, we've got MATLAB versus Octave. So MATLAB is commercial, Octave is not. I guess Octave's not technically open source. It's managed by a group of people, but again, you can suggest and implement. But they're both ways that I, as a researcher, become, in a small part, a software developer. Good news is they're both they're virtually able to read the code that you produce from each other. So you can communicate between the platforms very easily. But MATLAB is actually it's less than £100 for a student license. So there's no reason there's very little reason for me not to use it, given that that company then also supports a huge library of other add-ons that are very important for my research. And then on the bottom right, just two examples of non-commercial software which fill research holes that are very, very common, whether it's Plot on the lower right, which is making pretty graphs from easily available data sources, or ImageJ, which is quantitative data analysis. They're examples of where researchers have gotten together and said, look, this is what we need to happen, and shared it. And I didn't even mention something like R, right? Another freely available software. And it's important to have something like that just so I can try things out.